Tome of Uselessness. I'm Devin.
I'm Dan.
And today, this afternoon, this morning,
Whenever you're listening,
whenever we're recording, who knows, Dan is going to tell me all about Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's Star Trek Lower Decks, in case anyone didn't know that part.
Isn't there like a prank that's like an upper deck is when you like poop in someone's toilet or something? Like in the top part?
Yes.
Is that
yes?
Is this show referencing that?
No, it's not. Fortunately, it's a little classier than that.
Star Trek Upper Deck.
Yeah. Yeah, before we go into it, I'll just say, I know we were talking about this previously, but it was like, I was wrong about this. I basically ended up watching some of this show out of just curiosity because it's been out for a little bit and I'd heard it was good. But when they announced the show way back in like 2018 or whatever, I was so disillusioned by Discovery and what they were kind of doing with Star Trek that I was just like, I'm not going to watch a show like a cartoon comedy satirizing Star Trek. Like it's already got turned dark and crappy and gritty. So I was like, I'm not going to watch a comedy show that's going to go like so far beyond. But it's continued 3 seasons worth. Like I said, there's 30 episodes.
Nice.
And so I was just kind of like, well, I heard it was good, maybe. And then I ended up watching all 30 episodes in 2 days.
Nice. Devin style.
Yeah. So I was totally wrong. And I just needed to say that it's really good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, which is kind of why I wanted to do this recording, because I was just like, I should tell other people. And there may be other people that, like me, have been disillusioned with Star Trek since a while ago, let's say.
What do you think your turning point was for being disillusioned? Was it like just Discovery or before that, or?
I liked 2009 Star Trek. The sequel was all right. Like again, I like the cast and I like Benedict Cumberbatch, but then it was way too much of like.
Oh, like the movie.
The movie, yeah.
Oh, I saw those. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so much about it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it was bad in many ways, unfortunately. And then I was disillusioned by that point because I never saw even the sequel, Beyond. And like I didn't see it in theaters. I didn't see it till many years later, and I watched it, and it was decent. I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it as much, even.
Okay.
And then I did watch Star Trek Discovery Season 1, and like I said, I was like, I'm out. I'm done with this. If this is Star Trek, it's not Star Trek. I'm over it. Right? So, unfortunately.
What was, there was one, oh no. Devin's going down an old rabbit hole. Do you remember when they pumped out in the late 90s, early 2000s, like a bunch of sci-fi shows? Mm-hmm. Like there was the one that was underwater with the dolphin, Sequest or something.
Yeah, or something DSV or something like that. Yeah. Yeah,
and then there was also, wasn't there a Star Trek show starring Hercules, Kevin
Sorbo? No, that was another show. I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
Andromeda?
Yeah, I think that sounds familiar. But yeah, you're right. There was Lex and stuff like that too, and there was many Star Treks running.
Just so that we're all clear, Lex is in a category of its own.
That's true. I mean, it is.
Lex is so bonkers, and I love it so much.
I've only seen the first season, unfortunately.
Oh, it's so weird. It just gets weirder. For people who are unfamiliar with Lex, it's like a crew on a spaceship that is shaped like a penis / dragonfly that is organic, and it's a security guard, a dead guy, a robot head, and a sex slave.
Yeah.
And it's really great.
But yeah, you're right. There was also, and that's kind of what also kind of facilitated Star Trek's death, was that there was so many Star Trek shows running at the same time, because they had TNG going, then DS9, and then when TNG wrapped up, there was still DS9. They went right into Voyager, and then Voyager and Enterprise both ran concurrently at the same time.
Enterprise was the one I was thinking of. That wasn't Kevin Sorbo, though.
No, Scott Bakula. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so, like, there was just too much Star Trek in a sense, right? And the Scott Bakula one was the first time where they did, like, a prequel, because it was before, main Federation, like, before Kirk and Spock time, right? So it was before the Federation was, like, really established out there.
Right.
Yeah. And it was weird because I haven't actually watched all of that, to be also fair. I watched season 1, and then I asked a friend who had watched it all, because season 1, like, they set up the main antagonist is going to be people from the future, like, attacking the past to try to, I guess, stop, the Federation. And I was kind of like, oh, is it worth it to watch the rest? And they were kind of like, nah, not really.
That's fair.
So I never really watched all of that one either, but I think that one only ran for like 4 seasons, I want to say. But it was also in the era, like we've talked about as well, where they were making like 26 episodes a season.
Yeah, man. I've been like rewatching Firefly a little bit, and
Sure.
It's easy to forget that like that wasn't the full season. That was half a season when it got canceled.
Yeah.
And it's 13 episodes. I'm just like, oh fuck, they had to do double that much back then.
Yeah.
Pre-writer's strike meant 26, 28 episodes a season.
Yeah, during the more lockdown times, like I was doing a cycle of watching Star Trek, X-Files, and Stargate, and they all have like 26 episode seasons.
Nice.
It's so much. It's just like, god damn.
Like, no wonder there were filler episodes.
Yeah, well, and even like TNG, I think end of season 2 or maybe even season 1. It's like a clip show, right? Like
nice.
Where it's like Riker's like
unconscious. I remember clip shows.
Yeah, it's like Riker's unconscious, and then he's like remembering events through the season. And I was just like laughing my ass off, and I was like, oh yeah, they ran out of budget and they didn't know what to write. They're just like, just do a clip show.
The Nanny has some pretty epic clip shows. Where they remember that time, and then it's like a crazy situation. So good.
But like I said, modern Star Trek of late hasn't been as good. Although I heard the one with Anson Mount's pretty decent apparently, but it's more Star Trek-y. But again, my main issue with the more current Star Trek that they've been making, like Discovery and etc., is that they've gone back. They want to set it in the past before Kirk and Spock's time. But like we've talked and joked about, it's like you can't make things look like that anymore. Like TV just looks better by default, right?
Yeah.
So why didn't they just continue the timeline? And it's not a nostalgia thing about like characters. Like it's just more it doesn't make sense, right? Just like keep going. It's fine. Like keep imagining future stuff rather than they do these crazy scenarios in these past season or this past setting. And you're like, that doesn't even add up anymore, right? Like,
yeah, like if they want to go dark, like they've been going too. Well, to the best of my knowledge, because all I do is like listen to Red Letter Media reviews of it.
In season 3 of Discovery, from what I've gleaned, is they do go to the future, right? Because I think it's the end of season 2, they got sucked into a time vortex, and so they're in like the future, and then dilithium crystals all like get nullified across the galaxy.
Oh.
And yeah, so they do eventually do that, but it was like you should have just started in the future.
Yeah, the thing is, I was gonna say, if they want to be dark, why don't they just like have the Federation fall apart or something? And
that's kind of what they did, I think.
Yeah, and then they can just be dark after that. Like you know what I mean though? Like they don't have to. It's too idealistic.
That's what Star Trek was
to fit in with modern trends of TV.
Yeah, well, and that like when I first watched the first episodes of Discovery, they like discover, no pun intended, like a beacon, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, and it was like introducing a warrior race of some sort, but it was Klingons, and I was like, if you wanted to do something with like this other war, because then they changed the whole Klingon look and everything, and it was like, why didn't you just make them another race? Like it's Star Trek, you could just invent another race.
Because people have heard of Klingons, Dan.
Well, or again, if it was set in the future, they could be like, oh, some event happened and then the Klingon Empire became reclusive and we haven't heard from them in so long, right? But they were like, oh, it's just Klingons. And it's like, well, hooray, we've all seen Klingons. Like, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. But this show, this show actually does take place in 2380. It's meant to take place 1 year after Star Trek Nemesis. So it is in the future.
Nice.
Yeah. And like I said, it was started in, 2018 is kind of where they started doing the production on it. And it's kind of created by Mike McMahon is his name, I guess. And he was actually a head writer on Rick and Morty. And then came over. And this was when I heard this was happening. I was like, man, you don't want to get a Rick and Morty guy writing Star Trek. But he actually pitched it basically as this idea of, he's like, I want to follow a lower class of ship called the California class. And the ship that they're on is the Cerritos. And he's like, he wants to focus on just like other types of adventures rather than, first contact stuff and like big Borg battles. They're the people that go to a planet like after a first contact has happened to like fill out paperwork.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So the ship itself is already kind of like at a lower Star Trek standard, let's say. And then our characters that we follow are people who work in the lower decks, like ensigns that work on like, scrubbing the docking bays and like stacking crates. And like there's an episode where they got to like clean up anomalies from that the collected people have, or like the bridge officers have collected that they just don't know what to do with. And it's like, a weird crystal that changes your mood, right?
I like the premise. That sounds funny.
Yeah, well, and exactly. Like I was kind of turned off initially by that premise because I was like, that will be too jokey and stuff like that. But the show, as I've said from the beginning, has tons of heart, and it actually has that actual Star Trek hopeful vibes. The team all works together. They're joking. There's some conflict here and there, but it's not like you said, like a more modern show that they're just like they hate each other and like I hate that guy because he's Bajoran or whatever, right? Like there's none of that, which that's Star Trek to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and yeah, so our four main characters that we follow the most are Beckett Mariner, who's played by Tawny Newsome, and Beckett's a human ensign, and she's in the command track, and she's also the daughter of the captain.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the renegade rule breaker, but she's actually like good at her job and good at Star Trek when it comes down to it. And she tries to do like in the first episode, they do like a second contact where there's some paperwork being filled out. And then she brings like shovels for farmers because she's like, I was here before and these farmers have like low tech. She's like, I'm giving them shovels. Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So she's trying, she's more, she definitely is like doing renegade stuff, but it's usually for the greater good, as it were. But Brad Boimler is the other ensign on the command track, and he's played by Jack Quaid, and he's like the stickler for the rule guy, right? He's our straight man most of the time. And it's kind of interesting how he was described by Jack Quaid, who was like, he was the guy who would like nail the written portion of a test, like a driver test, but then he would fail as soon as he got into a car. But the character's not always depicted as that. Again, he's like the stickler for the rules and stuff like that. But he's less world experienced, but can like get stuff done and what have you. Like they do on that first episode, for example, they're down on the planet and then they're trying to like evade this spider thing, and he's just like freaking out. And he's with Beckett, and she's like level-headed, cool, keeping the plans together. But then they work together as a team, as it were.
Nice.
Yeah. Next one we got is Devana Tendi, played by Noelle Wells, and she's an Orion, who are like notorious pirates and aren't in Starfleet. And she's new to the Cerritos in the first episode, so she's kind of our POV into the ship and like all the explanations and the backstory and stuff like that, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's like thrilled to be in Star Trek. Like everything is awesome, right? She gets some crazy alien goo, and she's like, "This is great." And in that first episode again, like there's like a rage virus going around the ship, and she's having to like hold someone's heart and like pump it manually. At the end of the episode, she's like, "Oh, that was great! I got to hold a heart." Yeah. So yeah, she's always like super optimistic and having a good time, and just like, Mick Mahan said, he's like, that's how I would act if I was ever on a starship. Like everything's incredible. Right.
Fair. Yeah.
Last of our foursome there is Sam Rutherford, and he's played by Eugene Cordero, and he's like our engineer, Geordie LaForge-esque. He actually also has like a an implant, not the same like Geordie Porridge visor. Like he's just got like an eye visor and a memory implant because he's lost some of his memory, and so he's got this memory implant. And yeah, he's kind of like our Geordie LaForge, excellent at engineering, but he's still green, so he makes mistakes or he just does things differently. But yeah, that's our main foursome that we follow on the lower decks. And then you got some bridge crew that we far more than I thought with the premise and stuff like that it would be mostly always just Star 4 kind of thing, doing like weird stuff. But then we get a lot of the bridge crew as well. Captain Freeman is played by Dawn Lewis, and she's the human captain and Beckett's mom. Jerry O'Connell actually plays Jack Ransom, who's the human first officer, and he's like real like Will Riker-esque from TNG. In like that, he's got like the chiseled square jaw and is always like, hey, like, and always like pumping muscles and stuff. Like, he's always, like just like he's like always trying to work with the ladies and stuff like that. But it's he always gets like fail, or he's like ends up in a weird alien situation. So like satirizing that a little bit, but it's everyone's still competent and good at their job. The security officer is Shax. He's the Bajoran tactical officer, and he's played by Fred Tatasciore. Sorry, I'm probably butchering that name. And then the last we have Dr. Ta'ana, played by Gillian Vigman, and she's like a Catian, like a cat race, and she's like the Bones-esque doctor, where she's just cranky all the time and like swearing at people and stuff like that, right?
Sorry, I'm looking up like images on my phone so I can kind of get an idea of who you're talking about. And I was going to ask about the cat if you didn't say anything.
I guess I should send you something. You have some reference.
Is the captain the green girl or the other girl? Or no, the captain's daughter.
So no, yeah, the green girl is the Orion. That's Tendi.
Gotcha.
The dark-skinned girl with black hair, that's Beckett.
Okay,
and
cool.
Mom's the older version of that. But yeah, and then there's also a lot of what's really kind of interesting as the show kind of goes. There's tons of like Star Trek alum that voice some characters here and there. Phil Lamar also does a bunch of voices in there, and Paul Scheer, who hosts How Did This Get Made? He's in it. He's the engineer, the chief engineer on the show.
Oh, and, cool.
So I recognize his voice. His wife actually shows up, does a couple voices here and there as well. So yeah, there's like a lot of fun stuff in there. Like I said, 30 episodes, and so, they pack it. They're 24 minutes, but they pack in a lot going on. And as you can see from that picture, I'm sure you're looking up, is that they went for clearly like he wanted a mainstream animation style that reminded him of like Simpsons or Futurama, but then also kind of as well as some influence from Rick and Morty because he worked on Rick and Morty, right?
Yeah, I definitely can see the Rick and Morty influence.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, everybody has kind of like there's arcs, there's stories, and because every episode's like a single thing, but there may be like some overarching plot elements that come back and what have you. And I think one thing that makes that interesting to me is that unlike a live action show, and again, this doesn't apply to everything, but you can't do like reshoots with animation as much.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to write your story, you have to do your animatics, and you have to do your storyboarding and your voice work and stuff like that. And it's like it all has to be done before the final animation is finished. Whereas a live action show, it's like, oh, if we're missing something or we want to cut something, I think it's easier to do.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
so.
Yeah.
I think that's almost a crutch. Whereas this, it's like being constrained like that makes you write like a full thing.
Yeah, totally.
Again, maybe I'm projecting there, but it's just like, again, these stories, they're good. Like, it's super good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And as a person who enjoys a lot of Star Trek, I mean, there's tons of references, but he also didn't want the show to just be like Easter egg the show.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, they may reference stuff here and there, or you might see something in the background, but it's like, yeah, it's only like once in a while, or it's, it's not, it doesn't take you out, or it's in service of the story, or the character like Beckett they'll say like, oh, is this like because in one episode Ransom like gets godlike power, and they're like, oh, is that a Gary Mitchell situation happening, right? Which was a Star Trek a TOS episode where that happened, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So it's like it doesn't matter if you don't know who Gary Mitchell is or what that reference is, but it's like just part of the world that they live in because they live in Star Trek.
What What's the humor like in the show? Is it like Rick and Morty? Is it like Family Guy? Is it a little more tame? Like where does it fall on the spectrum of funny cartoons?
It's like I was saying. Well, and this is probably why I continue to watch the show, because it's not like overtly haha laugh out loud funny all the time, but like the situation is funny. Or so, for example, in that spider episode, in the first episode, right? They're trying to escape, and then they have to like they remove their uniforms to build some dummies, and then the spider like attacks the dummies, and then kind of like knocks over Mariners, but like goes to town on Boimler's like dummy, and just like picks it up and like starts shredding it apart. And they're like, why is it going after just me? Right? And they jump on the spider's back, and then Boimler falls off and then gets like bitten or eaten by the spider. And then they're like, oh no! And then the farmers come up and they're like, no, it's just suckling on him because we use them like we use the spider for milk. And then it just like suckles on him for like hours. And then eventually gets tired and he like escapes out of the thing, right? So, it's like it's jokes like that, like situational comedy, and I would say like it's not like crass humor or anything like that, which was kind of nice. Like I said, it's more yeah. Like I said, I think it would fall more closer to a Simpsons and Futurama for the humor. But like you said, there's a lot of that influence of like a Rick and Morty for like the fantastical sci-fi elements, right? Like they go into a room in the ship and it's just all these like vines and stuff like that. And they're like, why do we even have this room? And they're like, oh, it supports like the flowers, above us. And they're like, who goes to space to have flowers? and then they're walking through it, and Tendy's and I think someone says something like, oh, my tricorder is saying like the oxygen's really low. And Tendy's like, oh yeah, it's just like pure nitrous oxide in here, but I'm not affected by that. And then they trip out because it's nitrous oxide. Right?
Nice.
The human characters. And she's like, oh, I'm an egg, like below some sticks. So yeah, like I said, it's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. There's more cleverness, I guess, to the jokes rather than just like I said, like like Family Guy is well known for its like references about like, oh, this was what happened or whatever, right? Like nothing really of that happens as well.
That's good. I think I don't like that kind of humor, like Family Guy humor.
It definitely can wear thin. I felt in the beginning it was quite fresh, right? But then Family Guy's run for a bajillion years now too, right? So.
Yeah, I feel like Family Guy is just like mean in a lot of its humor. I think that's my issue.
Well, and like I was saying, this show actually is very like sweet, has heart, and like you like the characters, you like that they work together, you want to see them get through the situations, and they all do it. It's to them, it's like business as usual kind of a thing, even though, like I said, there's like a rage virus going on through the ship, and then they're just like. They go into the med bay and she's just like, strap that person down, and he's like raging, and she's like, double him up in the bed, who cares? And just like weird stuff like that. One of the funniest things, and this is gonna be some spoilers because I've been spoiling stuff anyway, is that Shax dies at the end of season 1. He like sacrifices himself in a big situation. I won't give that away, but then in season like 2, in episode 2 I think it is, he comes back.
Oh,
and there's no explanation.
Nice.
And then the character that he sacrificed himself for Rutherford is like kind of freaking out about it. He's like, I feel bad. Like, I need to know. And they're like, and they list all these ways that characters kind of come back from the dead. Because they're like, bridge crews are always coming back. They're like, he's probably transporter buffer, it's clone, alternate dimension thing. And then they name all these things. And throughout the episode, he's like trying to figure out how he came back. Because like he's in the engineering, and someone else asks Shax, they're like, oh, how'd you come back? Didn't you die? And then everyone's like, oh, you don't ask that. And he like breaks down crying, and he's just like, oh, no.
Nice.
Yeah. And then eventually he does find out, and he's just like, she's like, if you want to know, it's dark. And he's like, you will never be the same. And at the end of the episode, the rest of the crew are like, oh, so how did you find her out? And he's like, no. And then he's like starts sweating, and they're like, it's probably something anyway. And he's like, maybe they're protecting us from dark knowledge. There's a running gag that I really love where every time someone either like ascends to the next level or like dies or something like that, they see a smiling koala. That's like behind the veil of the universe, almost in a sense. And then like it's mentioned a couple times, and then like at one point Tendy tells someone like, shh, don't mention the koala.
Nice.
But yeah, so like I was saying, the humor is, I think, more built into the situations and just like how it comes out of it. And yeah, again, as someone, like there's a character, Rutherford creates it, and it's great, and it's Badgie, and it's like an analog of Clippy from like Microsoft's products. And he's on the holodeck, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Badgie." And then, of course, it goes horribly wrong.
Nice.
But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff like that. I think it's in the start of the second season where they're like standing on a orbital platform, like working on it and stuff like that. And they're like, this is so amazing. We're part of this ship and they're part of the crew. And then the ship just warps away, leaving them.
Oh no.
And they're all just standing there and they're like, well, how much oxygen do we have? So yeah. So there's a lot of, I don't know, I found a lot of stuff very humorous, very enjoyable about it. And the character interactions are great. And yeah, the voice acting is really good, really solid.
Yeah, you're making me want to watch it now.
Yeah, I was amazingly surprised. Like I said, I was like, oh, I'll check it out, I guess. And I was just like, yeah, next episode. Until I finished it all, because I was just like, this was really good. Yeah, 3 seasons so far. I don't think there's an official announcement about season 4, but I would imagine they'd go into season 4 because I think it's like the most popular Star Trek thing. I would say it's the only thing I heard of that was good, essentially, of Star Trek.
Oh.
Lots of fun. I just wanted to say, yeah, that was interesting here that the studio, the animation, it's an independent animation studio, lovely name, by Titmouse. And
they're based in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, because I've seen the BC logo come up. And so they do like board teams doing like rough drawing of each episode in black and white, and then use like a radio play version of the voice actor recordings. And then they put together as an animatic and to use that with the full animation and with all the details color. Juno Lee supervised as director for the first season, and Barry J. Kelly taking over as director for the second season.
Nice.
And yeah, Antonio Canobio guided the overall animation style for the series.
Oh, cool. I know 2 people that work at Titmouse. I wonder if either of them work on that.
Possibly.
I know one of them doesn't for sure because he's on Rick and Morty right now.
Tell me that, yeah. And I thought this was neat, the uniforms that they wear. So if you've seen a picture of them, they're actually unused concept art or design for Star Trek Generations, which was the movie in between. It was the first like TNG movie.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think the uniforms look good, actually. I like their look.
Yeah, I like them too. When I was looking, it looked good.
Yeah. Don't want to sit here and just say every episode and what was good about him. But yeah, any questions, more questions about it?
I don't think so. I kind of was asking just as you were, I was just interrupting you, Devin style, being like, rah, rah, rah.
I know I was just kind of on a good rant. What's a good rant called? A pontification of it, I guess.
Ooh, big words.
But yeah, I would highly recommend, if you can watch it, do so. I guess I gotta use the better line that make it so.
No, it sounds good. Do you want me to wrap things up, or did you have...
Briefly, I was pleasantly surprised about how wrong I was. Vastly enjoyed the show. Highly recommend.
You think no one should watch it ever?
No, the opposite.
They should make an animated version of Lex.
Yeah, it'd probably work well.
No, it would have to look... In order to, like, capture the essence of Lex, it would have to be drawn with somebody's, like, non-dominant hand on, like, a napkin with crayon.
And I mean, like we've talked about so many times, and as well, I think because when we talked about it in the Simpsons episode as well, that it's like, these animation kicks ass, and it's great for shows like this because then you have unlimited budget, right? Like, because even in the opening credits, I forgot to mention this, is like they go to all, like, it shows the ship like pulling up to like a Borg battle, and they just turn around and like go away. Right?
Nice.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, you can draw anything, right? And that's why comics is always such a great medium too, because it's like, it's unlimited budget. It's just by talent and time that you have to draw it, right?
Totally, yeah. Animation is great. I support animation.
Animation is great.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up now before I say more intelligent things like animation is great.
That's a big stance.
Yeah, this is my hot take.
Yeah.
I like cartoons. Take that, snowflakes. Okay, well, if for whatever reason you like this podcast, I mean, half of it is good. The half where Dan talks is good.
Sometimes.
But if you like this podcast, please give us a follow on Instagram. It's Tome of Uselessness. We have a website, tomeofuselessness.com. You can email us, tomeofuselessness@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We would love to have suggestions or requests, or you can just tell us that we're dumb and wrong. That's cool too. And what else are we on? Nothing else, right? That's all of them.
YouTube as well, but wherever you can get
YouTube, Tome of Uselessness. You can listen to us there instead of listening to us here. Also, we love you.
Stay safe and thanks for listening.
Bye.